know you can't have it. And I said, could I rent it from you? He says, maybe. And I said, what about $1 a year for 60 years? He says, keep talking. And I said, well, I could build a building if you'll rent me this land, and then you could rent 10 classrooms back from us for $140,000 a year, and we'll maintain it and all that. You know, so what we did is we built a business plan, and we just opened it up a month ago, and we got 10 of their 80 acres, and they can have 350 more classes because they're using our classes when we're not using them. And then we went one step further, and we now have a K-14 campus where at this new high school, the children can graduate with an associate's degree at 17 or 18 years old, because once they're considered college ready, then they take college courses from our instructors, or they can go across the parking lot from Pikes Peak Community College and they can get the classes there, but they're still our students. So University of Colorado liked that. They said, man, you did all this without taxpayer money, and and we came in early and under budget, so it worked out real well. And but we need to be doing things like that. I know there's charter schools in Colorado for kids that have been dropped out, that have been in prison. There's even a charter school, I think it's on the western slope, for unwed mothers. I think there's one unwed father that's in there, and there are about 100 unwed. But for kids that are disenfranchised for some reason or another, charter schools should serve that population. And I've had some people in I work on the Governor Ritter's P20 Council, and I've had some people say, well, how are your parents disenfranchised? I mean, they're middle to upper middle class, white. Why should you even exist? I said, well, my parents tell me they feel disenfranchised philosophically from education. I know this is a stretch for some, but and that's why we're old school. We make kids wear uniforms, and we don't have shop, we don't have home ec, we don't do sex ed. We leave a lot of the stuff. I find out what the parents want, and the parents in our community want certain things, and then I give it to them as long as it's legal. And what a concept. That's pretty good. But anyway, I wanted to tell you the most unique thing about TCA, because I know I'm more than halfway through, and it's our character education program. And I told you about the 3 C's. But I know that a few years, actually it was right before I got out of the Air Force. It was like in '02. I went up to the Aspen Institute. Has anybody ever been up to the Aspen Institute? They do these think tanks for groups of leaders, and the general from the Air Force Academy didn't want to go. He thought it was a waste of time. It was not a waste of time. There were CEOs from all over the country in there, and I went up in his place. And we talked about leadership and character. And they wanted to talk about, all sorts of things that were comfortable to talk about, like the transgressions of multinational corporations in third world countries. They wanted to talk about euthanasia and abortion. And I kept trying to drive it to personal character. Because what I saw in the Air Force was that most leadership failures were character failures. In other words, I say, how many generals and admirals and colonels did we lose, that died in combat in the last 30 years in America? And the answer is like maybe 1. I don't even know if I don't know what it is, but it's very small. But how many have we lost to character issues? Oh my gosh, dozens and dozens. They're usually in the news and the Washington Post and the New York Times. So to me, what I've seen out there, but at the Aspen Institute, people didn't want to talk about it. These CEOs kept trying to shift it to this other stuff. It's hard to talk about that stuff. But the parents at the school where I work said, we want you to talk about that with our students every day. We want you to talk about keeping your promises, being someone that shows respect to anyone, regardless of their race or their religion or their ethnic background. We want you to talk about telling the truth as much as you can, and having the courage to do the right thing, leading a disciplined life. All the things I think that Rotary are all about. But that's unique, that schools, and I asked Governor Ritter, and I mean, I respect Governor Ritter, and I'm one of his advisors on the P20, but I asked him at our first public meeting, what does he think about character education in public schools? And he says, no place for character education in public schools. And I said, but sir, why? And he said, it can get weird. It can get into the religious right thing. We need to keep it secular and focus on student achievement. And I agree. it needs to be secular and focus on student achievement. But I also know that in schools in America, Americans care about, I think they care about the type of graduate that comes out of our high school just as much as their academic achievement. We want good people that can go out and do good things. And so I guess I'm saying publicly I disagree with the governor on that, but he's focused on data-driven results. It's hard to measure good character. I'll give him that. But I would love to, if any of you could help me figure out an assessment, any psychometric instruments that we could measure someone's character. Of course, it'd probably be used in marriage counseling and everything, but it's a tough one. So anyway, I just wanted to share one thing. And before I got out of the Air Force and went into the education business, one of the things that got me interested in character is this was out of the L.A. Times, Los Angeles Times, back. Gosh, it's almost 9 years ago now. When the women's soccer team won, remember we beat China in the World Cup. It was a 0-0 tie, and then there was a shootout at the end. This was like back in 2000. Do you remember that? And we were all watching, and we were so proud and everything. How many of you know that we cheated to win? Anybody know? Yeah. This was the only newspaper in America that pointed out that Brianna Scurry was cheating. Now, she didn't get caught, but in all the Chinese newspapers, America cheats to win. America cheats. But it was one paper, and I was so proud of our women's team and all that. But what Brianna was doing was coming out ahead of the goal when she was trying to block the kick in the shootout, and the ref, for some reason, wasn't calling it. And the closer you get to the shooter, the better you're cutting the angles down, and you have a better chance of blocking. Well, the first kick, she came out, a few feet, and the next one she came out lots of feet, and the one she blocked, she was way out there, and they just weren't calling it. And so what bothered me back then was what she said to the reporter. She said, we're taught to get away with whatever we can do. If you're not cheating, you're not trying. You do whatever you have to do to win. And what bothered me is I know there's millions and millions of young people in America in youth soccer leagues. Are they being taught this? And now they're the future CEOs, and they're going to be running Quest and all these other wonderful companies. Oh, I said, I'm motivated now to go in and try to have these conversations that count. And if you want to look at the article, it's right here, LA Times, Bill Dwyer was the... But anyway, it's a challenge to shape school culture. But what we do at the Classical Academy, and I think this is the reason we have people calling from the delivery room, is we start talking to the parents that are on the waiting list before their children even come to the school. And we say, hey, here's what we expect. This is a partnership. This is not just, you send them to us, we're the experts, and we're going to educate your kids. No, we're going to do this together. And we make them understand that we're going to hold hands and we're going to work together. And our mission statement says the Classical Academy exists to assist parents with the education of their children. In other words, parents are in charge. And I know that in our North Colorado Springs community, that works, and it doesn't work in all communities. But it's an interesting and fascinating thing, I think. And so we partner, and then we start it in kindergarten, and they're hearing it all the way through. It's integrated across the curriculum. We have mentor programs and all sorts of things. But what I want to do, because I know I'm getting towards the end of my time here, is I want to tell you about last year, something where, we won the National School Award from the Character Education Partnership back in 2004 as the #1 K-12 school in the nation for character. And we've gotten hundreds of thousands of dollars in grants from the Daniels Fund and other organizations for sharing our character program with inner city and rural kids, and we've done that. But I'm just going to tell you something. Last year, during the election of our first black president, there was trash talk at our school. There was racial trash talk at our school that I wasn't aware of, and I didn't expect it. But it came to my attention after the election in November, before Thanksgiving, and we grabbed these immature 15 and 16-year-old boys, and they were actually trash talking and using the N-word and stuff like that in front of some of our African-American students. And it became a big deal. And it blew up, and it was in the newspaper down in Colorado Springs. And I'll tell you, I took that, well, first, it really hurt that our students would do that. And I hope we're the only school in America where any of that went on. But I said, okay, if we're a school of character, bad things happen at good schools. And it's how we react that really defines how this school goes forward. And I said the first